All right, welcome to Halitics. So glad to talk to you today. I'm Hal Ginsberg, of course, and I hope that you'll try, if you can, to give me a call. 240-242-5646. Got a lot to talk about. It's going to be busy, and I'm going to get it all in 1 hour. I'm still fighting that cold, although I guess I sound a lot better. No lozenge today, so that hopefully means that you won't hear me clicking anything in my mouth, or it definitely means that, I guess, unless I somehow throw a lozenge in there. Didn't get a chance to comb my hair. Very busy putting together the imagery for today's program. And you can see 3 topics: Hamas, Harvard, Haley, and then, of course, help. And I think these topics really do show how bad things are. And I hate to be so depressing. I wish there were silver linings in the clouds, but I'm not seeing a lot of silver linings right now. Could have spent the entire program discussing what's going on in Israel, Palestine. Obviously, that is a 24/7 news story. But I have been covering before the new year the situation at Harvard. And because the president, or the former president now, Claudine Gay, has resigned, I did want to touch on it. I have been critical of the coverage provided by one of my favorite live streamers, my favorite video hosts, of course, Brianna Joy Gray. And I wanted to just kind of maybe cover, that story one more time, at least at this point, and put a dot on the I, if you will. May not spend too much time on Gay, and then finish off with Nikki Haley, who is apparently a darling of Democratic neolibs, people who really call the shots, those who are who really make decisions in the Democratic Party. They want you to support Nikki Haley, which my immediate reaction, of course, to is, don't support Nikki Haley. I mean, that seems kind of obvious, but they're, the Jamie Dimons of the world, the who's the guy? I can't remember. He's considered like Jake Tappers of the world seem to really like Nikki Haley. So that, and I think they're presenting her as the alternative, the superior alternative to Trump, who we, obviously have to loathe, fear, and all that. So, my reaction is, wow, maybe we need to take a third look at Trump. If they're so afraid of Trump that they're going to promote Nikki Haley, maybe Trump isn't that awful. No, he's really bad. He's really, really, really bad. But Nikki Haley is in some ways worse. I don't have an answer to who you should support. Well, beyond, at this point, Dr. Joel Stein. I had my hopes for Cornel West, but that didn't work out. Sadly, he just made some decisions I think were so problematic, specifically with regard to leaving the Green Party and running an independent campaign, which, as far as I can tell, is gaining zero traction. That was such a poor decision on his part. And I'm usually the guy who only talks about policies, and Cornel West's policies are as good as anybody's and better than almost everybody's. Maybe no better than Dr. Stein's, though. So at this point, my only support, my only candidate I can really recommend to you without serious reservations is Dr. Jill Stein. The only other candidate I would say is okay to vote for is Cornel West, because his policies really are good. People like Marianne Williamson, RFK Jr. are pro-war, and they have some really weird, I hate to say weird because it's like, oh, what, you're like an establishment person. You're saying they're weird because of crystals, like Marianne Williamson. Well, it is. Come on, it's freaky stuff. And RFK Jr. with the anti-vax goes way too far. I understand why that's appealing to some, but he throws out the baby, which is Western medicine and the many advances we have made, even with for-profit healthcare, throwing that out with the bathwater. So, yeah, either West or preferably at this point, Jill Stein for president. Let's get right to it, though. I want to, the moral issue of our time is unquestionably Israel-Palestine, the genocide that continues unabated, Israel's violent, murderous reprisals for what happened on October 7th, which we're hearing, at least from some reliable outlets like the New York Times was worse. Maybe it was worse than we had originally thought, with crimes of sexual crimes, horrific crimes that outrage us to the point where we're kind of inured to what Israel is now doing with our assistance to the Gazan people. Don't fall for it. There's no possible excuse, no justification for what Israel is doing. The 22,000 plus murdered by the IDF. Even if you throw out 10% who you might assume are Hamas militants, Hamas fighters, and therefore it's okay to kill them, right? It's okay because they're soldiers. Even if you throw out 10%, you're still left with 20,000 dead civilians, 1% of the Gazan population. That number ever rising. The area just decimated, bombed, almost into complete rubble, with our weaponry, by the way, and that we're paying for as well. This is simply, it's genocide, but we have a duty. We have a duty to do something about it. I'm disappointed. One thing I didn't really talk about yesterday, mention it briefly, alluded to it obliquely in the discussion, which I thought was outstanding with Charlie, about the blocking Trump from the ballot and the 14.3 lawsuits, but also my disappointment with my colleagues who attended liberal arts colleges, who I hope to believe would be more willing to look objectively at the world situation, look objectively at the climate, Holocaust, as well as Israel, Palestine, as well as at Ukraine. So often don't. So often just simply accept the liberal line, the neo-lib line, whether it's the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC. Well, Israel's bad right now, but they need to survive as a Jewish state. This is essential. Yes, it's regrettable that all those Ukrainians are being killed, but we have to stop Putin. We can't just simply stop consuming fossil fuels. This kind of hedging, this kind of, both sidesism, which is just ridiculous. It's just wrong. There is good and evil in the world. What Israel is doing in Gaza is just evil. There's no, but what about Hamas? No. Israel is the persecutor. Israel is the oppressor. What they are doing is wrong. Our support for Ukraine in the Russia war is wrong. We fomented that war. We provoked that war. We need to end it. And the climate holocaust, the only solution is we just stop burning fuels now. I'm going to focus on Hamas, Harvard, and Haley. Let's get to it. The situation, as I mentioned, is just so horrific. We talked, I think, before the end of the year, how the hunger is now stalking Gaza. And that is a slower killer, a much slower killer than bombs and machine guns and grenades and missiles. Just in the new year, in the first 24 hours, this is from Al Jazeera, 200 Palestinians killed. One day. 200 killed. One day. And this, is ongoing. We have from that article, this is Jan 2, yesterday, from Al Jazeera. And, people say, well, I don't trust them. There's never been any specific facts that are set out in Al Jazeera that have been debunked when it comes to this war. No one's saying, oh, they've overstated it. It turns out they said that the Al-Shifa hospital was bombed by Israel, but it wasn't. Or the Khan Yunis rubble pictures were faked. That just hasn't happened. Instead, human rights organizations, other news organizations on the ground like CNN have routinely confirmed what we hear often first from Al Jazeera. So, more, not just in Gaza, where you see a strike on the Palestinian Red Crescent, right? So the analog to the Red Cross here. The Palestine Red Crescent was hit by the Israeli army. 5 displaced Palestinians killed there. People who were trying desperately just to be safe, blown up, murdered, killed. And the murders by Israel of Palestine, of Palestinians, aren't confined to Gaza. You can see as well, 5 killed on the West Bank. I can tell you this. I can be upset. I can be outraged. I honestly don't know what to do beyond saying you can't vote for Joe Biden. You cannot do it. He may say, fret and rub his hands together in dismay. There's been simply no threat towards Israel. There's been no red line in the sand presented to Israel. I can say to you, Ilhan Omar is better. She's Somali. She's Muslim. I can say that the other Muslim from Detroit is better. I'm sorry, I forgot her name she's Palestinian. They voted for Hakeem Jeffries to be majority leader, to be House Speaker. They voted for him to be House Speaker. AOC voted for Hakeem Jeffries to be House Speaker. I don't care how much you may think. Ro Khanna voted for Hakeem Jeffries to be House Speaker. I don't care how much you may think that they're on your side. The most important vote when you're in Congress is who is going to be leading Congress, who is going to lead your caucus. And they chose somebody who is completely in the pocket of the weapons manufacturers, of AIPAC, of Wall Street. They are not on your side. There's no excuses. The argument, well, you got to pick your battles. This is the most important battle. It's game over. Once a Nancy Pelosi is in charge of your house, once a Hakeem Jeffries is in charge of your caucus, it's game over. You aren't going to get what you want if you're a progressive. They will never, ever do what you want if you're a progressive, because their loyalty is to the big donors. Their loyalty is to the insiders. They are not going to do what the squad says is important to them, what Ayanna Pressley says she cares about, what Pramila Jayapal claims is important to her. That will not happen ever if Hakeem Jeffries is in charge of the Democratic Party, and every Democrat voted for him. They are not going to stop this war. They are not going to stop the killing in Gaza. They're not going to end the genocide. I don't know how much clearer it could be. 240-242-5646. There is no battle more important than who is in charge of your party in the House. And the Progressive Caucus has completely folded, completely given in to the corporate militaristic wing. That's Tlaib, Rashida Tlaib. I always trouble with her name. Sorry about that, folks. Rashida Tlaib. She's a Palestinian. She voted for Hakeem Jeffries to be the House Speaker when there was the fight over whether it was, when the old Speaker was voted out, McCarthy, and then they chose this guy Johnson, who nobody ever heard of. And there was this hope. There was a hope among the Democrats. Oh, well, maybe we can get Hakeem Jeffries. Woohoo! Wow, wouldn't that be great? Every Democrat in the House The people that you're holding out hope for will be on your side. They voted for the representative of Wall Street, the representative of AIPAC, the representative of the military-industrial complex. They are not on your side. They are making things worse. They are not on the side of the Palestinian people. They are not on the side of the oppressed. They are not on the side of the persecuted. They are not on your side. Numbers from Israel, Palestine, are just absolutely horrific. They are absolutely terrifying. I have shown, I'll try to get to, maybe we'll get a few pictures, and I'm not sure if I've got them in the slide deck, because at some point the numbers, just numb you. Palestinian died in an Israeli jail, called an assassination by Palestinian groups. This is from the Al Jazeera article dated yesterday. At least 22,185 people killed and 57,000 injured in Gaza since the October 7 reprisals began. In Israel, by contrast, the death toll has been ratcheted down from October 7. Originally, Israel projected somewhere around 1,400 dead. And I think we heard, I don't have this in front of me, but I think we heard they were almost all civilians. This was just an attack to take hostages and to kill civilians. It was not a military attack. It was a terrorist attack. That's what Israel told us. Now, we've seen the numbers ratcheted down. Over 10% fewer. Now, I'm not, of course, 1,100 dead. It's 1,100 dead. I'm not minimizing this. It's horrible. But the number is 1/20th what Israel has killed. There's no proportionality. Not that there should ever be. There should never be proportionality. If you're attacked, if there's a crime, then you go after the perpetrators, the criminals. That's what October 7 was. It was a crime. I would make an argument. I could make an argument. I'm with Norm Finkelstein. I have a lot of trouble condemning Hamas. They are the representatives of the victims, the persecuted. I've got a video here that's troubling, very troubling. We'll get to that in a moment. That does really upset me about, and of course, if I were in Israel, I would be, so upset, so terrified. It's awful. They killed innocent people at a party, at a rave. No defense except that their people, 2 million of them, are being kept in an open air concentration camp. This is what happens when one group of people is oppressed and persecuted and murdered. They lash out, and innocent people are the victims so often. Join me, 240-242-5646. So I mentioned there's the revised down total. They revised it down. This was, I think, in November. I'm not sure where I got this story from. They revised it down to 1,200. We saw it's actually now confirmed to be 1,139, and who knows if that's exactly accurate. Maybe it's wrong, off by a few people. But they revised it down. They had to revise it down again because many of the original dead that they thought might be Israelis were in fact Hamas. And I think this is really important to bear that in mind because, and I'll get into why, or more specifically why that matters in a minute. But what it proves is that this was no, and I hate to even say this, but it was no walk in the park for Hamas. I mean, this was for them a dangerous operation. They knew that the IDF was going to respond. They know that the IDF has far more sophisticated weaponry, that it outnumbers them, right? There are far more Israeli Defense Forces soldiers than there are Hamas militants, and their soldiers are better trained with better weaponry, and they're going to kill. They don't have any compunction about killing people. So for Hamas, this was a very dangerous operation. Yes, they were killing unarmed civilians, but they were also throughout the... And I'm not going to, so they're so brave. No, that's not the point. The point is that they knew when they were in Israel that they were subject to being killed. And that's going to become important when we get into the story of the sexualization of war, the allegations by Israel that Hamas weaponized rape and was using rape as a weapon to hurt, kill Israeli girls, women, and apparently some men. Let me see if I can get into that. So before, we'll get there in just a moment, but just a little bit more on the number of dead and who those dead people were. Remember when we first heard about the 1,400, we were told they were almost all innocents, civilians, people who were at the rave, just there to have fun, to dance. And there were many, many people who fit that description. And it's so sad, so awful. But that's not the whole picture. So what did I say? 1,200. So December 15th here, this is from Channel 24 France. So we're getting a better picture 2 months after. And it confirms the unprecedented scale of the violence, but challenges initial testimonies by Israelis and by the IDF. And I think what's most crucial, let's get into that number right here. What did I say? 1139. So this is confirmed, right? This is where we're looking at the total number of Israelis killed. 1139. Of those 1139, a little under 700, 695, were not military, were not defense, were not security. So in fact, over a third. We were told originally this was just purely a cowardly attack by Hamas to kill civilians. That's not what happened. Of the dead, over a third were in fact security forces. So I guess that I don't quite know whether that includes police, the security at the festival. I'm going to assume it does. But there were obviously soldiers, there were obviously police, there were obviously security, not just innocent civilians who were part of that attack. So the stories that came out of Israel were designed to make everything look worse, to up the death toll, to up the number of civilians versus security. The numbers themselves are awful enough. If you're the parent, the sibling, the spouse, the child of one of those young people, I say young because they were mostly, in their 20s at rock concerts or even teenagers, it's awful, of course. I'm not trying to say it wasn't an atrocity. What I'm saying is that Israel at every turn exaggerates to make you more and more angry, to make you hate Hamas and by extension the Palestinians. You've heard Israel say, there's no innocent Palestinians. You've heard that. It's just nonsense. Half of them weren't even born when Hamas won the election, a contested election back in 2007. It's more accurate to say there's no innocent Israelis. And I don't buy that. I don't believe in collective guilt. But Israel has to be more responsible for its government than the Palestinians and Gazans are for its government. Your thoughts, 240-242-5646. All of this leads again to the conclusion you can't vote for anybody, really. You can't vote for either party. The Republicans are even more invested in Israel, more tightly tied to Israel. And every House Democrat voted for Hakeem Jeffries. I make that point over and over because it's so critical. And I know many of you are making excuses. Well, you have to pick. I don't understand that argument. There's no battle more important than who leads you in Congress. There's no battle more important. And the Democrats, the progressives didn't even lift a finger. I mean, they didn't. It's not that they even sat it out. They actively supported this horrible monster to be their leader. And one of the clear results is there's zero pushback against Biden for failing to take on Bibi and saying, no, we're not going to support it. We're going to send in the military. Why isn't Congress demanding that the U.S. Army go into Gaza and forcibly separate the IDF from its victims, the people of Gaza? Why aren't they? Why isn't Congress passing resolutions instead of meaningless ceasefire calls that go nowhere? In part because neither leader of either party cares one whit about them. Okay, we know now that over a third of the victims in Israel of October 7 were not civilians. They're deemed to be security forces. What about the death toll over 22,000 plus as of yesterday? So it's probably up another 50, 100, whatever, however many Israel's killed in the past 24 hours. What about the death toll? Is it a third Hamas fighters? Is that what it is? Which is about where we were. We're about where you are now with Israel on the 7th of October. According to Human Rights Monitor, 90% of those 22,000, that Israel, over 22,000 killed as of yesterday, were civilians. We know many, hundreds of children, hundreds of people in hospitals. We had women shot and killed in a Catholic church by the Israeli Defense Forces. We call them defense. It's not defense. We had 2 women killed in a Catholic church. Churches in Gaza are under tremendous stress. They may never recover. The Christian population, one of the oldest in the world, because remember, Israel is the birthplace of Christianity. So this ancient Christian enclave in Gaza may just simply go away, may just end. And Israel's reprisals, 90% of the dead are civilian. Now even Israel says, well, it's 2/3. Right? We're really happy about that. We've only well, even if you go by Israel's numbers, they are still killing civilians at a higher clip than Hamas did on October 7th, when 375 of the dead were security and about 675 were civilians. So even by Israel's own acknowledgement, it's killing civilians at a higher clip and at a higher percentage and at a far greater rate. 240-242-5646. Oh, I have trouble remembering that. The New York Times, look, Israel gets this doesn't look good, right? I mean, just the numbers are horrifying, and the pictures are so awful. Let me just so you see. So this is in the aftermath. This is a picture here. This is in the aftermath of the attack by Hamas. There was an immediate response by the Israeli military, and there you see a Palestinian dad holding his dead baby. So it's a particularly gruesome picture. It's particularly graphic. And, these pictures don't do Israel any favors in the court of world opinion. I mean, people see this and they're like, what the F is going on here? How is this ever okay? So if you're an Israeli propagandist, what do? You're like, we got to figure something out. I mean, dead babies don't make us look good. What can we come up with? Well, how about women shot in the vagina? How about rapes, but mass rape, widespread rape on October 7th? Maybe that'll kind of do it. And they have been promoting the narrative that has not gotten a lot of attention. And I think the reason it never really got too much traction is because you don't have the imagery. You don't have the pictures. And now, why is that? Is it because it didn't happen? Or there were a few? And here's what I truly believe. I think there were sexual assaults. Not nearly on the scale that Israel describes. Nowhere close to that. But rape, sexual assault, this is a commonplace in war. This is one of the worst, it's just something that when men fight each other and kill each other, they view it, and this has been throughout history, recorded history, and almost, certainly before, I'm sure. Well, you won. You get the spoils, and the spoils are women, girls. That they are your playthings. You get to despoil them. So, do I think that some Hamas militants may have had an opportunity that they took to sexually assault women, rape them, maybe kill them? I think very possibly yes. But I also think Israel's grossly exaggerated it. We've got a video I'll show you in a little bit of what I think may have happened. The New York Times covering this, and it's very upsetting because the New York Times, so many people I talked about, and when I did this before the holiday, I showed you a video from the New York Times, which was graphic and horrific and showed all these 2,000-pound bombs dropping in Gaza City and Khan Yunis and around Gaza. And they sure had lots of imagery. Well, now I guess there was a lot of pushback and a lot of people were very upset. A lot of advertisers, big money people, didn't like all that. And they came out with this article last Sunday, Screams Without Words, How Hamas Weaponized Sexual Violence on October 7th. And I say this is the kind of story that should be reported if it's true, if it's well documented. And if it isn't, it shouldn't be. Because this is being used, and I saw this in my relatives, in my friends, people I know. Oh, look at how bad Hamas is. Look at how bad the Gazans are. Who can blame Israel for killing 10 Gazans for every one? Because some of our women were raped, corpses, women were shot. So this is used as a distraction. What happened on October 7th, whether it included mass rape, whether it included despoliation of corpses, was a crime. It was a mass crime. It was a mass murder. And what do you do? What do police do? We all see CSI, right? And, NYPD Blue, whatever, all those shows. I can't remember. What's the one? Law and Order. The police always, you just cut off the crime scene. You go in, you take pictures. Lots and lots. I watch old movies. And when I say old, I mean old. I mean going back to the 1930s. I don't really watch The Silence. I can't have trouble with those. But you can see movies from the 30s with the FBI taking on gangsters in Chicago. And murders in New York City. And all the way through, I remember seeing a movie in the early 1950s about detectives in Manhattan tracking down a serial killer. They're always taking pictures. They're always calling a photographer. Now they have these old cameras with the flash bulbs that pop. They're always taking pictures. They've got their strings and their chalk. They mark off where the corpses are found. They take fingerprint samples. In, Law and Order, there's always all these swabs and vagina tests and this and that, and get the semen and that. Apparently none of that was done. And I see my friend John is calling. Let me see if I can get John on. One sec, John, we'll get right to you. Thank you so much for calling. So as far as we know, none of that was done. Now, again, there were some pictures taken. It's not like there were none. This is a picture of some dead, I believe, Israelis. This was in the New York Times. They aren't identified clearly as Israeli, but I think they were this is on the road to Israel. So we do know, clearly there were murders. There were Israelis killed. But where are the forensic tests of the victims of the sexual assaults? We had descriptions in that article. There's a description of a woman being raped, but no one thought to take pictures with their cell phone. And so I am very honestly, I'm skeptical. Remember what's his name said, Reagan? Trust but verify. Where's the verification? Israel and the police said, well, we had to bury the bodies. Corpses can only be out for a certain point. We bury within a day of the death. Okay. I have seen I'm Jewish, plenty of Jewish funerals where, no, you're not. Yes, that's the general goal, right? But if there's exceptions all the time where the body isn't buried within 24 hours, there's a million exceptions for that. And certainly if there's a crime and you're investigating it, then that's a reason, right? So I'm not accepting. I want to get John on. I had some videos I want to show. We'll see if we can get to him. But John, let's go to you, man. How you doing? And Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. I'm doing all right. I was calling because of your show yesterday, but you guys were talking about Trump being kicked off the ballot in several states, and my worry is about that the due process going on is at the level of the state, and my worry is that this is going to be used as a pretext to kick Democrats off of the ballot in states like Florida and Ohio. They'll just simply, we know how they are. They just simply accuse somebody of something, and whether it's, a rational accusation or not, and then they, act accordingly, kind of like how they make laws that they know are unconstitutional, but they know they can temporarily enforce them. Once that one gets struck down, they just make another one.
John, let me just real quick on that. I think that's a legitimate concern. We're certainly seeing the Republicans' impeachment of Biden that they keep talking about. I don't know if it's going to ever happen, but that's clearly just a response to the Democrats impeaching Trump. And I was against most of the impeachments of Trump. I was against all of them because I think there were reasons you should have impeached Trump for, specifically denying due process to folks and denying constitutional rights to immigrants. So I think that should have been explored for sure. But, because the Democrats impeached Trump, whether rightly or wrongly, wherever you stand on that, the Republicans are clearly just using that. That's not the pretext. That's the reason they're going after Biden. So yes, I could see Republicans trying to ban Democrats from the ballot likewise. The problem though for them, and I agree, laws don't make much difference to these people, but the law is very clear, right? The only way you can be barred from the ballot is if you were part of an insurrection. And it's pretty hard to say. I mean, I don't know how you're going to jerry rig a claim of insurrection against, I don't know, Ro Khanna, or I don't know, someone in a red state, a Democrat in a more red state, Jim Clyburn, right? I don't know how you would make that argument.
Well, if these people in Colorado and in Maine are allowed to do it without a conviction against Trump, they'll come up with their own style of hearing. You know, maybe a jury won't sit and as the trier of fact. Maybe it will be a judge, a hand-selected judge. The states get to have their say in how that happens. Maybe they'll pass laws that make it easier to allow them to, narrow the path that can be taken, or not narrow the path that can be taken, but that allow them, the process that they want to use, and then they do that. I think it's a huge mistake doing it without a conviction at the federal level.
I hear you, John. I think this is something I've been sort of saying without saying it, but the rank partisanship is a problem. When Nixon was impeached, it was bipartisan, and there was a recognition by many Republicans that he had gone too far in countenancing and then covering up the break-in of the Watergate. I don't know if he was ever proven or shown that he had knew about it beforehand. If G. Gordon Liddy had told him, I don't know, but he certainly covered it up. And I think Republicans kind of were fed up with that. I don't know if today that would be the case. The partisanship is a huge problem. And I think what you're saying is right. I agree with you.
Yeah. And
it's no fun, right? When we agree. I mean, I think it would be a stretch. I think this would be it would be hard for Republicans, frankly, to ban Democrats using the same tool. But I think a conviction should be kind of the bottom line, right? If you're going to say you engaged in a criminal behavior to the point where you no longer get to run for office, I kind of think a conviction should be required. That said, that's not what the Constitution provides. This is what Charlie was saying. He said, well, the Constitution doesn't say that.
I think ultimately who decides what the Constitution says is the 6 conservative members sitting on the Supreme Court. And if they view this as a partisan attack, and let's say the state of Florida wants to bar the next candidate from running, and they make up some wild, just something that's a really big stretch of how somebody participated in an attempt to overthrow the government, and they decide to ban that person from the ballot, that's a huge swing state right there. And it goes to, let's say it goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, this court just decides whatever they want willy-nilly, and then they just justify it. Sometimes those opinions are absurd that they write. It's not always. I mean,
I agree. Yes, I agree with you there too. I thought Bush v. Gore was an absolutely awful decision. It was very poorly. There was no rationale. It was simply, we're Republicans. We want the Republican to win. Period. So I'm with you on all of this, John. John, I'm with you. I think these are we live in very scary times. The center is not holding. And I think the reason we don't have a center that's holding the country together is we don't have a center. We have a small number of very wealthy people. We have a managerial class, and then we've got people struggling to survive and poor people.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Did you have a comment about, I've only got 10 more minutes. I'm going to cut this show off at just after, I got 15 because I started 5 minutes late. Did you want to comment on Israel-Palestine?
Every day I look in the news and I see something, more egregious than the day before regarding that. It doesn't, I guess they started pulling some troops out. Is that correct?
I heard that, John. You know
Israel.
what? I didn't look closely into that. So you, I'm sure, have better information than I do. I heard Israel saying it's going to a little bit, slowing down, but we've still seen the death toll climbing.
Yeah, and at this point, it just looks like they're clearing land, kind of like the people of Brazil burning the rainforest. Um,
It's expanding.
Israeli,
It's expanding this country of Israel and moving
yeah,
out the Palestinians, the Muslims, and moving in Jewish Israelis.
yeah, and the talk of where those Muslims are going to go. Are they going to cram them into southern Gaza, or are some of them going to the Sinai Peninsula to live in Egypt, and some of them, uh, it just, who knows? I mean, nobody really can take them in. So I sent you that video the other day. I'm sure you watched it. I had no idea that what was going on, where Israel has plans to maybe strike a deal with other country in exchange for weapons. They also have to take Palestinian refugees. And you saw that video, right? The one
Yeah,
where they
you know what,
were.
John? I'll be honest with you. I have been fighting a nasty cold. I saw that email. I really try to read everything that you and others send me. I may have missed it. This does ring a bell. I know. Let me go back and look for that. I don't want to promise I
Yeah,
did. I may have. But like I said, I've kind of been a little bit out of, the weather. What I forget what the term is, but under the weather, right? That's the
yeah,
term. But it's better if you explain it. But do me a favor, save it
yeah,
for later in the week, maybe for the free for all Friday, because I want to get just real quick wrap things up on the Israel. I've got a video here I want to show because I try very hard, John, and I thanks for the call. I try so hard to be open-minded and even-handed, and people who are calling out Hamas, and like I said, I do think they probably did use sexual violence. I don't reject that out of hand as a possibility. Like, I don't say that Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal, for whom I have the utmost respect, I don't say that they're claiming that all, that the every sex crime alleged is BS. But let me say this: they did not, as far as I could tell, and they are getting a lot of heat. Okay, so Blumenthal and Mate, I kind of got ahead of myself there, right, for the Gray Zone, and they do videos for the Gray Zone, and they are very pro-Palestine, very anti-Israel, and have debunked many claims by Israel. And they have really taken on the narrative that there was a lot of sexual crimes committed by Hamas. And I think a lot of what they say is very persuasive. But they have not mentioned the case of Shani Lauk, I believe is how it's pronounced, a German-Israeli young Jewish woman in her early 20s. And there's a video. Now, I said there's no documentary evidence that we have. There's apparently a video of a woman called The Woman in the Long Black Dress, where she's shot with a video, dead, exposed. I haven't seen that. I looked for that. I couldn't find it online, no matter where I looked. This is Shani Lauk, and it's not great either, but it's really instructive to me that the one video we have that I think supports, doesn't prove, supports the claim of sexual violence actually was shot by Hamas, shot by Palestinians. The video is from them, their footage. I haven't seen anything by the Israeli Defense Forces, by Israel police, anything that supports the claim. So let's watch this video. It is disturbing, I believe, very disturbing. So let's watch this. And I think this one is
a young
silent.
tattoo artist named Shani Lauk has been identified as the woman whose body was paraded through the streets in the back of a pickup truck by Hamas military.
So you can see that they've got her, I believe that's her leg. This isn't the best video that I've seen. I think they'll show some of it, but you see one of the Hamas, Now, she's wearing in some of the reports of Shanae Luke or Lauk, she was described as naked. She's not naked. She's wearing a skimpy dress. You can see sort of parts of that dress, which in the videos of her at the rave, she's wearing the same dress. So it doesn't look like they removed the dress. It was just a very skimpy dress. But why did they take her? Why did they put her in the pickup truck? It's really upsetting.
Militants after they attacked an outdoor music rager during their sneak assault on Israel Saturday morning.
Parts of it. You can see that's her back. I saw the video without the cover up. It's not obscene. You don't see any of her, her breasts or her bottom or any of that. You don't see that in the video, even without the cover up. She's wearing a bra. It's just a revealing dress. But it's awful. Why are they doing this? What's going on? Because I do want to be as honest with you. This is a very upsetting thing to see. It's one victim. It's not widespread. It's not lots and lots of rapes. You could say, well, if they did this to this one woman, they could have done it to lots of others. Sure. But where's the evidence? And even here, this isn't proof really of sexual assault. And I don't know, is she dead? I was thinking maybe she's still alive because they did take hostages. So maybe she was a live hostage. Later, IDF said Shanae Lauk was killed.
Shani is a German-Israeli dual national. She was among the hundreds of victims in Israel when Hamas fighters targeted the dance party near Kibbutz Urim and other Israeli communities. As disturbing footage of the violence quickly...
All right, so there it is. Now that's an AI-generated report. The point I'm making is when I heard or when I watch Blumenthal and Mate debunk the claims of widespread sexual violence by Hamas on October 7th, I'm troubled by the fact that they don't even mention Shanae Luke, however, I'm not sure again how it's pronounced. It's disturbing to see. Now, again, that's not proof. They would say, well, you didn't see. She's not being raped in the picture. She still has the same outfit on she had on at the rave. Yes, but she's clearly, if she's alive, she's clearly being handled in a very upsetting, sexualized way. So that is a takeaway I have. But it doesn't in any way change my view that what Israel's doing is completely wrong, that what Israel's doing is genocidal. What it does is say to me, this has to end. We've got to stop the violence. Take your foot off the throat of the Palestinian people so they don't respond. Regardless of what they did or did not do, Hamas, to Shanae Lauk, there are people cheering. The anger, the hatred towards Israel is so strong, so palpable. And why is that? Because of what Israel is doing and has done for decades to Palestine. And so innocent people like Shanae Lauk are being murdered, maybe raped, being sexually harassed, being treated like objects. That we've got to stop this. All right, I said Hamas, Harvard, and Haley. So let's move on very, very quickly to Claudine Gay. The former president resigned from the university in the wake of a number of claims that were documented that she committed plagiarism. And I think Bret Stephens, who is a Republican columnist at the New York Times, basically nailed this. Claudine Gay became a symbol, both to her, well, let me say it this way. She became a symbol of affirmative action, of the importance of diversity, of the critical need that many on the left believe we have in our institutions, our most powerful institutions like Harvard, the importance of having Black women, people of color, women running these institutions, how they have been systematically shut out for centuries, for millennia, and we're all the losers, and that women themselves and black people and BIPOC people are the losers, and we must change that now. And then the flip side of that, people who say this is wrong, we need to focus for either good or bad reasons. Maybe they really truly believe in a meritocracy. Maybe they truly believe that you should get your job based on your performance, your accomplishments, your skin color, your gender, your sex should be irrelevant. I think there are many people who believe that. I think there are some who do subconsciously, maybe consciously think, no, these positions of power, of influence, of prestige should be reserved for white men. Regardless, she became a symbol, and we lost what really matters. And I think what Stevens points out, I don't agree with Stevens a lot of times on what matters, because what matters to me more than anything else is that we don't kill people. Stevens supports Israel killing people in Gaza. I oppose it. We have very different views about what matters. But I think we both agree that whatever we think matters is lost in this whole Claudine Gay kerfluffle. And I agree with him that from everything I can tell, she shouldn't have been picked. She didn't have the credentials. She wasn't a scholar who had demonstrated the kind of brilliance, the kind of unique genius, if you will, that we demand to become the president of our top institutions. She had a skimpy resume by contrast, not compared to me, but compared to other possible other candidates for the job. And so she was chosen because the Harvard Corporation wanted to placate critics on the, I don't want to say on the left, but, identity critics who on the identitarian left. It wanted to placate them. And because also she didn't pose, and this is why I have no problem with her being let go. I just wish this was the discussion. She didn't pose a threat to the order. She supported it. She backed down when she was attacked for allegedly failing to defend Jewish students from threats of a new Holocaust. She backed down. She didn't say, no. The Holocaust that's going on right now, the genocide that's happening right now is in Gaza by Israel. It's not Jews who are victims. She didn't stand up for the graduate student, the Palestinian graduate student who was attacked by a Harvard law professor's wife because she wore a scarf. She didn't stand up for that woman. She vowed to be more responsive to the Jewish students who weren't under any threats. So for all of that, for that cowardice, in my opinion, she deserved. She didn't, let me say it differently. Did she deserve to be fired? She was targeted wrongly too. She's a symbol. She's a symbol by those on the left who want a black woman president. That anyone who criticizes her has to be racist, has to be sexist. But she's also a symbol for those on the right who just want to take her down regardless of the justice of their cause. So it's tough because I disagree with everybody involved. But in the end, she wasn't a champion of the oppressed. She wasn't a champion of victims. And she wasn't a great scholar. So to me, that's the bottom line. And the other bottom line is you don't appoint someone to be the president of your university just because, or mainly because she's black. And for those of you who say, well, that wasn't why, that's racist for you to say that. Then I would respond, but her record demonstrates that she didn't otherwise have the credentials. When she was picked, the first thing Harvard Crimson says is she's our first black woman president, not this is the great scholar who developed a new technique for, I don't know, splitting the atom or whatever. That's not who she was. So I think in the end, I don't feel that it was wrong for Harvard to let her go. Maybe all their reasons were bad. But she did plagiarize. She did fail to accurately or correctly attribute sources. Do I like the fact that the guy who went after her was just doing it because she's a symbol and doesn't give a crap about Harvard academic integrity? Yeah, I don't like that. I would like to know if there are other scholars, quote, scholars who are guilty of similar offenses. Maybe there are. But she wasn't, to begin with, a great scholar. She wasn't somebody who had a resume that entitles her to a third chance. So I'm not going to cry tears for Claudine Gay. Excuse me for that cough. Isn't that awful? All right, real quick, I've got to get to this as well. Nikki Haley is, and I say Nikki's nuts. She is not someone you should ever consider voting for, even if Jamie Dimon tells you to vote for her in the Republican primary because she's an antidote to Trump. Jamie Dimon is a sleazebag. I know he likes Nikki Haley. Why does he like Nikki Haley? I think the reasons tells a lot more about Jamie Dimon and why. This is a Democratic strategist. This is your Democratic Party. This is who Jamie Dimon, a billionaire Wall Street banker who supports the Democrats, wants you to vote for in New Hampshire. And I think this tells you who the Democrats are more than anything else, that they would support someone like Nikki Haley.
What was the cause of the United States Civil War?
Well, don't come with an easy question or anything. I mean, I think the cause of the Civil War was basically how government was going to run, the freedoms and what people could and couldn't do. What do you think the cause of the Civil War was?
She says it was a hard question. It's an easy question. The South wanted to enslave people, wanted to continue to enslave people. The North said no. That's why Abe Lincoln was elected president. And that's why they fired on Fort Sumter, the South did. Without the Civil War, slavery might not have ended. If the South hadn't initiated that war, the slavery might not have ended. But it was a major part of it was the reason for it. She can't say that. Then she turns around. She says to the guy, "Well, why do you?"
I'm sorry?
I'm not running for president. I wanted to see your
That's a good thing.
On the cause of the Civil War.
I mean, I think it always comes down to the role of government and what the rights of the people are. And I will always stand by the fact that I think government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. Government doesn't need...
I mean, it's all gobbledygook. And this is... I mean, look, the answer is you have government so you don't have slavery. In the end, the reason we need to have a government is so that we don't have slavery. Because rich and powerful people will use their power and their wealth to own and abuse and exploit others. And you can call it serfdom, you can call it peasantry, call it whatever you want. That's why you have government, to protect the weak from the strong. And Nikki Haley believes just the opposite. She wants government there to protect the powerful and wealthy from having to do anything that they don't want to do, ever. So that's why she struggles with the question. That's why she shouldn't be president under any circumstances. And that's why Jamie Dimon, who feels exactly the same way as she does, wants her to be president. You decide. All right, that's going to do it because I'm